People often say that Mac computers age well. You almost never hear someone say that Windows PCs do the same. Why is that? And is it true? I can say from experience that Mac laptops indeed do age well, and the build quality usually is top notch. I mean, you can use a Mac for almost a decade if you don't abuse it too much. That also has to do with Mac OS being designed to run on specific hardware that Apple has picked out themselves. But what about a cheap business Windows laptop that's almost 7 years old? How does it hold up in 2019? Did it age well? Stick around to find out. This is gonna be a pretty long video, so I'm gonna put in some time codes in the description below so you can skip ahead if you don't want to watch the whole thing. Just wanted to mention that before we continue. This laptop has been in my possession for the past 2.5 years. I bought it used for about $100 off of the Swedish version of eBay. I've been using it for all kinds of things like watching videos, paying my bills, and even some occasional music production on the go. And it's done a great job with that. But what else can you do with it? Can you game on an old laptop with integrated Intel HD graphics? Can you do some video editing? How's the battery life compared to modern laptops? And is it worth spending money on an old Windows laptop? Well, let's find out. As I mentioned, I use this thing daily for all sorts of things. I even use it as a table mat sometimes. How's it like to use an old Windows laptop in 2019? Well, it's pretty good actually. Part of that probably has to do with the fact that I put in a 250 gig Crucial SSD I had laying around. That adds about $50 on the price. It made all the difference though. Originally it came with a 320 gig 5400 RPM mechanical hard drive. It went from feeling like an old station wagon to a fast sports car with the SSD. As for the rest of the hardware it came with, let's go over that. It's got an Intel i5-3337U processor. That's a 2-core 4-thread CPU with a base clock of 1.8 and a boost clock of up to 2.7 GHz. It has two 4GB RAM sticks with a total of 8 GB dual channel memory, which should help a bit with the graphics performance, which we'll take a look at later. The screen is a 13.3-inch TN panel with a whopping resolution of 1366 by 768 pixels. That's one of the biggest flaws with the computer. I'll talk about that shortly. And it's got all the basic ports you'll need, like two USB 3s, a USB 2 port, an SD card reader, Gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 1.4. It even has a VGA port so you can hook up 2 extra monitors to this thing. That's if you have an old VGA monitor laying around. And it also has a decent Wi-Fi card with a transfer rate of up to 400 megabits per second. The battery life compared to modern laptops isn't great, but you'll get about 2.5 hours of video playback on 70% brightness out of the 44 watt-hour external battery, so it's really easy to swap the batteries. There is a 65 watt-hour option which should get you a couple of more hours of battery life. The charger is a small 65 watt unit with a barrel plug, and if you're into Skype meetings it's got a 720p webcam which looks like this, and the internal microphone sounds like this. It doesn't have the greatest image quality and I was in a pretty well lit room, but it gets the job done. It's not much worse than a modern laptop, to be honest. The keyboard feels very responsive and it's easy to type on. The keys have a nice tactile bump, they're not too hard to press, but I do type very slowly. But that's my fault, I just need to practice typing. The trackpad is kind of small, but it feels okay and the tracking is very good. It also has dedicated buttons for left and right click, which makes it a bit easier to mark text or move around windows in Windows with one hand. As for the speakers, they produce sound, and not much more. They're kind of crap, so use headphones. The biggest flaw is the screen and the resolution. The screen itself is pretty bright and the colors look good. The sweet spot is really narrow though. If you move your head even slightly up, down, left or right, the colors get distorted right away. So content creation isn't ideal, but if you want to cut a quick video then it's fine. The problem with the resolution is that you can't fit very much on the screen. Modern apps usually need at least 1080p screen real estate to look good, so everything is cramped. But yet again it works okay most of the time. And it means you can run games at a lower resolution and maintain some sharpness. Having established that it's pretty good for everyday use, how about gaming? Let's have a look, shall we? All the gaming footage is captured from another computer using an HD60 Pro capture card, so it shouldn't impact performance at all. I'll start off with some semi-modern games to see if it can handle it. As a Quake veteran, I played the original on some crappy computers in the past, with 320 by 240 resolution, in software mode on a 14-inch CRT screen. Ah, good times. Let's see if this will be better, or if it let me boot the game at all.
One eternity later.
Yes, it did boot. It just took forever, okay, maybe not forever, but about 7 minutes, which feels like forever. As expected, it's a slideshow on the native screen resolution on medium settings. It's totally unplayable. I'm getting about 10 to 13 FPS. I consider 30 FPS to be absolute minimum for a playable experience. What will it take to achieve 30 FPS? Maybe if we tweak it a little. I'm gonna set the resolution scale down to 60% and turn everything down as low as it goes. Maybe we'll get close to 30. Wow, original Quake looks better than this, even in software mode. But it's kind of playable. I never thought you could get this kind of performance out of an old Windows laptop with integrated Intel graphics. I'm kind of surprised that it booted at all, to be honest. It's a 17-watt processor and I'm getting an average of 25 to 35 FPS, which is pretty good. But damn, it looks like shit. But how low can we go? Let's turn the resolution scale all the way down. Oh my god, look at that. I would love to show you some more gameplay, but then you'll probably go blind from the bad image quality. Now let's take a quick look at some other games. Dirt 4 is a fairly recent game released in the summer of 2017. It's got real nice graphics and a bunch of graphics options. If I turn everything down to the lowest setting possible, I'm getting about 30 FPS, which makes the game playable, but it once again looks like shit. But the gameplay is still there. Another fun racing game, or if you could call it a racing game, is Rocket League. I'll start off by turning down the graphics settings and taking the resolution down a notch. This will be an occurring theme, by the way. I'm getting about 40 to 50 FPS on average, and it's very playable and looks pretty good on the 13-inch screen. I even managed to score. Yoo-hoo! Now for some more appropriate games of the 2010 era. That's a few years before this laptop was released. But even back then, the Intel 4000 graphics chip wasn't exactly known for its amazing performance. If it could handle Rocket League and Dirt 4, then it should have no problem at all running older games, right? Okay, let's take a look at CSGO. Counter-Strike runs pretty good. I'm getting about 45 to 60 FPS and it feels smooth enough. This is a game running on the old Source engine and it should run pretty good, which it does. I wouldn't play any ranked matches though. But if you're playing casually, this is just fine. The same Source engine is used in Portal 2. We'll take a look at it next. This is a game I've never played before making this video. I've had it in my library for maybe 7 years or something like that, and damn it, I missed out on a great game. I could not stop playing. As you can see, it runs very good and it's above 50 FPS most of the time. This is a good looking game too. It holds up even today, in my opinion. But I have a bunch more games to show you, so let's move on. Taking a look at Skyrim, it runs great if you turn everything down to low and run it in the native screen resolution. I even saw 60 FPS at times. Wow! The lowest I got was about 30 FPS and it felt very smooth. People are kind of impressed that the Nintendo Switch can run Skyrim, but that's not very impressive to me. If a 6-year-old laptop with integrated Intel graphics can run it at the same resolution and almost the same image quality. But I think the Switch version is the remastered edition. But don't get me wrong, I love the Switch, it's an amazing console. I digress, let's move on. Alien vs Predator is a hidden gem in my opinion. A great game that runs on most computers. I'm of course running it on the lowest settings at 720p and the performance is okay. It's very playable and looks pretty good. And now I'm gonna shut up and let you look at some scary gameplay. And now to a more skateboardier game, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD. I had so much fun playing the old Tony Hawk games on the PlayStation. So many great weekends with friends. But this updated HD version looks good and plays good, as you can see. There are basically no options for the graphic settings, but it turned out good anyway. The game plays nice and stays around 30 to 40 FPS. It's such a fun game. And I don't even like skateboards. The last game from the same era as the laptop I'm gonna show you is Bayonetta. A hack and slash devil may cry type game which I never played before either. It seems kind of fun too. It mostly stays around 30 FPS and I would consider it playable. This is a game where you need quick reflexes to be great at it, but for casual gamers I think 30 FPS will do just fine in this title. And of course I'm running it on the lowest graphics settings. Retro games should work really well on this laptop, old classics like Duke Nukem, Quake, Star Gunner and of course my favorite, Death Rally. I'm gonna do a separate video on that showing you some Windows XP performance and some older games and maybe some DOS gaming too. So is it worth $150? I would say yes. It's a good sized, well built machine that's easy to carry around. It can do most of the things you expect from a modern laptop, but at a much lower cost. I would definitely recommend you to swap out the hard drive for an SSD if you get one of these or a similar laptop. This could be a great laptop for younger people who are starting to get into computers. You don't have to worry about damaging it and the aluminum chassis is pretty robust and can take quite a beating. It also is a great traveling companion if you don't want to bring an expensive laptop with you on a trip. It can do some light gaming and it's pretty good for games from 2008 to 2012. Sure, the battery life could be better and the screen is not great, but considering the price, this is a very nice little machine. So if you liked this video, maybe consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike and please let me know in the comments so I can do better next time. Thank you for watching and I'll see you again sometime in the future.